yesterday, somewhere last week I accidentally went off. And I'm not sure what I did, but okay. So, first thing is first, like I told you, if you go to my webpage, you will find this calendar where, if you look at the bottom, I have the weekly schedule. I have links to everything. And also on Teams, every day, I do put down what we're doing that day. I'll try to include links to other things, remind you of stuff. So here is a little list I made for you. Individually, because I just care too much. It's kind of a problem I have. In a handy bookmark form. Good job. Big play. Don't quit on it. Did you?
Yes, I did.
Wow.
I literally was like, this is very nifty.
See? They just called it bookmarks.
Oh my gosh, my time.
Don't quit. So close. All right, so here's a list of terms for the test, and most of them you just have to know the basic information about them, and I'll ask some multiple choice questions about this, but then you'll notice there's a bunch with asterisks. And I include asterisks because asterisks, as we all know, are fun to make, but also asterisks are ones that will be choices for ShortID Assets. Let me make sure it's working. Yes, it's working. ShortID Assets. And these are short 3 to 4 sentence paragraphs that you have to write. And I'll give you these as a choice. Now some of them, like I put the Declaration of Independence in bold because that has 3 parts that will be choices. And I will make you do one of those. But I'll give you choices and you choose a term. I talked a lot about Bacon's Rebellion and racism. So you will have to answer something about that. Maybe like Bacon's Rebellion or racism, a choice of one of those two. They're very much related. But the other ones, I'll give you choices. Little groups of like 4, choose 2, something like that. And it's 3 to 4 sentences. And there's no topic sentence. But start, like, if you're going to identify racism, start with racism and then write your short ID. Does that make sense? You start with a term. It makes it easier just so I can see it right away and I don't have to guess. And okay. But in the first 1 or 2 sentences, you have to explain or a quick summary what it is. So what the term is. So explain what it is, where, when, you know the basic W's, everyone got that? What, where, when. Basic facts about it. So it could be a term or a phrase. So I have, you know, the Tea Act or the Tea Party. You know, they go together. I might just put down the Tea Act and then they fit together. The next part, there has to be a sentence that gives an example, a concrete example of what happened. It has to be a specific fact. It's something that what happened. So, the Tea Act, if I just put down the Tea Act, it could be something about like the Tea Party or the Sons of Liberty protesting this. Or an example that this was another effort to reinstate mercantilism. Some kind of concrete example. And then the last part, and this might be the most important part. So the last sentence, you must explain why it's important. And why it's important is, what did it lead to? What did it lead to? Because these aren't little bits of trivia. This led to something else. The Tea Act led to the Intolerable Acts, which led to the Continental Congress, which led to revolution. So it has to say what it led to. Something specific in that era. Has everyone got that? 3 parts. Quick summary, what, when, where. Example, why it's important. And I guess if you don't ever want the how is the example. If you're what, when, where, why, and how is the example. Any questions on that? They're really good ways to write what you know. Multiple choice questions you might think are better because you don't have to write anything. No, there's only one choice. Right or wrong. You make a mistake, misread it, you can miss the points. Short ID, you write what you know. And I'll give you options so you can write what you know. So you might not get every detail of it, but if you answer those basic points, give me an example, you'll get points. Short IDs are much better, and it's a way for me to have you write, but have a broad variety of topics. You know, if I do an essay, it narrows it. But there's something else about short IDs. Think about what that is, a short ID. You know, 4 sentences. You add a topic sentence, maybe one more example and some kind of transition, and you have a paragraph or a body paragraph for an essay. That's all a body paragraph is. It's basically, you have a topic sentence, you explain how something relates to your thesis statement, you give an example, you explain why this is important, what it led to, then you go to the next paragraph. This is basically the building blocks of an essay. So for example, a 5-paragraph essay, you have introduction and the closing paragraphs, but then the 3 body paragraphs are the same things as short IDs. You just have to relate it back to your answer to the question. So this is how I chunk up writing essays. There are good ways to do this. There's good ways to answer questions, and I do short IDs a lot. I'll talk about it again, but I'll give you choices. So there'll be like Declaration of Independence, and I'll put down the 3 things we'll talk about today, and you choose that 1 or 2 of them and write short ID. Because the test is going to be on Tuesday. I went through the dates, and I didn't want to do it on Monday, so I want to make sure everyone's clear about what we're going to do on this. But that means you're going to come here, and you have to have a laptop. And you all have that with you, I assume, right? And so you'll type it in here, and everybody else at home will log in and turn their cameras on so I can watch it. I'll put them on the big screen so you can watch and take the test too. Won't that be exciting? It's not as exciting as you think. I did it for Western Civ. You thought it'd be exciting watching their face grimace. They didn't know question. Okay, any questions on that though? You excited? It's not open note. I grade the people who do it at home significantly harder. So I think you guys are there. But still, that's why I have to have the cameras on, you know, the routine. We just have to make do here. And it just happened to work out for Tuesday. The next test might work out for a Thursday, and you'll be at home. It's just the way it is. Keep this list. Please go through it. If you have any questions, then Monday will be the day I'll answer it. I won't do a formal review per se, but if you have any questions, you can ask me, or in Teams, throw up a question and I'll answer it. Maybe correctly. Okay, so on that happy note, let's go ahead then and finish up the Declaration of Independence. Aren't you excited for the test? You finally get approved? How many short IDs would you want? 30? That's a lot of writing. Hey, you're going to get 4, 5, or 6. Probably 4 or 5. Probably 25 multiple choice. Some of the multiple choice will be really basic. Some will be more complex. Yeah?
So if there's 4 or 5 short ID, that's 4 or 5 different topics that you then have, like, paragraphs about.
Yeah. So the ones with asterisks will be the ones I choose from. And the Declaration of Independence. That's why I made that one bold. Because that one could be 3. We'll get to it right now.
Like 3 out of the 4 or 5, or?
Well, what I would do, I think, with the Declaration of Independence is I'll say that will be a separate one where you have to answer, like, make 1 short ID or 2 short IDs about the Declaration of Independence. So you choose 2 out of those 3.
Okay.
And then for another one, I'll pick another like 3 and choose 1 or 2 of those.
Wait, so are we going to be required to do the Declaration of Independence?
The Declaration of Independence will be one of, you will have to do 1 or 2 of those from the Declaration of Independence. I just haven't decided. All right, so I'll only ask short ID from that. It's a good way to do it. All right, so what did we get to in here? Oh, don't forget this calendar. It's beautiful, isn't it? If you click on this, it gives, like if you go, you know, this, it gives you information, all that kind of stuff. Click on Common Sense as a link to that Revolutionary War packet, stuff like that. Sound good? Okay. Where did we get to yesterday?
Humanism.
Yeah.
To where?
Humanism.
Like right.
Here?
Yeah.
Did we get to life, liberty, and property?
No.
Did we get to this?
No.
Natural humanism? That's where we quit? Okay, so we got, do we talk about deism? Did I do that?
Yeah.
The clock's right. Okay, good. Let's go to, get going from here. I have a couple pictures of Locke here because I love this picture of Locke because he does have that little bit of a look of an elderly woman, but at the same time he's got a really big nose. He's got a very Roman nose. I have a big nose, so what the heck? And huge eyes. And so they wanted him, when they drew that, when they painted that, they clearly were probably trying to de-emphasize his eyes. So he must have had massive eyes. So, do we get this? So natural laws are sovereign. We got John Locke. That's John Locke, the philosopher. In many ways, he would be the first of these philosophers of this era who would go beyond the idea that people are brutish and horrible and mean, and to the idea that people actually do have a potential to have rights and to make decisions for themselves. And he had great influence on Jefferson. He would be the father of liberalism. The father of liberalism. And we mentioned liberalism before, but it's the idea that natural rights exist for all people. Natural rights. And, just trying to make sure we're on. Oh, good, we're good, okay. Natural rights. And that would be the reason for government to protect these rights. And everybody has them inborn. They're given by their creator at birth. When they flip the switch and the universe functions. And so, liberal, everybody has rights. And we'll see this in the French Revolution, it become more known as conservative. This idea that not everybody is equal. It's more complex than that, but I'll give you the base definition. We'll get into more detail about what liberal and conservatism means to this day. And every person must defend his, and that's the term we use, his, because we're talking about, to his point of view at that time, it would have been Englishmen. Life, health, liberty, and property. Which would be shortened to life, liberty, and property. The origins in life, liberty, and possession. It's more complex, but it is also the ability to be able to accumulate wealth. But that's going to become life, liberty, and property from Locke. This should be familiar when you read the Declaration of Independence. And that is where the base foundation of Jefferson's idea, there'll be one more philosopher. And so, this is the beginning of the Declaration of Independence. And in it, it does a couple things. First off, if you read through it while it's up there, it lays down that we have, it is necessary, and we have a good reason to break away. We're not doing it for base reasons, just because of greed, or we just are tired of the British, or we just had a flight of fancy one day. We have a real reason to break away. You also notice, we're not sure what we're creating yet. And there are no grammatical rules. So we have capitalized letters, just, it's just the way it is. But is it the country of the United States, or is it separate states? But one thing is very certain. There were no states yet. There were no states until there was a United States. And this will become an issue. What came first? The United States or the states themselves? They'll fight a little war over this. You might have heard of it. Called the Civil War. And who won? The United States won. Technically, the Civil War is the fight between the United States and the rebellion against the United States. And then, it says that, and to assume amongst these powers of earth the separate and equal stations to which the law of nature and nature's God entitle them. Deism. That is deism 100%. Remember nature's law? I told you there are natural laws to govern society. Laws of nature. The creator. So it's a deistic document. It's very much a document of the Enlightenment. And yeah, they rarely, if ever, well, it's complex, but they were not, at least to the point of view of people at the time, they were not Christians. And so with that, This is where we get to the main element. This is where we get to the main element, the philosophy. And so, this is the first paragraph of it. And this is, wow, this has everything in it. And so, this first paragraph, would anybody like to read for all of us and show off their great reading ability? I know you want to. Is that a nobody? Any volunteers to read it? I'll stop you, because it'll come pretty quick. It won't be that long. You want me just to volunteer somebody? Okay, I'll volunteer somebody. Let's go, Emma. Because you're in the middle.
We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal.
Stop right there. Good. So, first part of the philosophy. Number one, remember I said there are 3 parts of the Declaration of Independence. The first part, we hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal. By the way, I should add, most people did not hold this to be self-evident. This was radical stuff. Self-evident to only whom? You okay? So, the first part of the philosophy, equality. This is the first part. So when I ask you about the Declaration of Independence, I'll put down, I'll say answer 1 or 2 for short IDs. The first one will be equality. All men are created equal. But let's be clear about it. It says all men. All men. What kind of men?
White men.
When John Adams saw this, he thought white men with property. That's what John Adams saw. Thomas Jefferson was a little more radical. He saw all white men. Thomas Paine saw this and said all men, probably women. You notice how I said probably? He wasn't 100% there, but he's really close. That's incredibly radical. And yet still not far enough, arguably. Arguably. Remember I said this is the United States. Women do not have equal rights in the United States under the law. Under the Constitution. Women are not equal. And so, did you know that? Yeah, women are not equal. We'll get to it. It's called the 14th Amendment, and women aren't included. And an attempt to rectify that called the Equal Rights Amendment did not pass in the 1970s. So, we will come back to that. That's kind of a big deal. But the great thing about the Declaration of Independence, it is a document that grows. And therefore, we say this, we look at that, it's all humans. Everybody. All people. They are equal. And it does not say citizens. It doesn't say anywhere only citizens of the United States are somehow equal. This is everybody. This is an inalienable right that everybody has. This is part of the reason why this document is so important around the world and would have such influence. Where the United States, good and bad things about it, but we have something to be proud of, and that's part of it right here. Everybody, regardless of where you're born. But, obviously, most people were not included, at least to the founders. Abigail Adams, John Adams' wife, she would write her husband a letter. She knew what was going on. Incredibly intelligent person. John Adams greatly respected his wife, but also, to his point of view, she's still a woman, so it's not quite equal, as smart as she was. But she wrote him a letter saying, what about the ladies? Don't forget the ladies. And what did Adams respond with? Not quite, but almost. That's nice. That's good you think that. That's great, but no. One step at a time is how you respond to it. One step at a time. AKA, wait your turn. Wait your turn. Someday, maybe. Long after we're both gone. Maybe. And that happens a lot. You know, Adams was sitting there considering himself, I'm one of those people who are equal. And it's really easy for him to say to somebody who is not considered equal, wait your turn. Don't worry about it. I'm being fair, aren't I? Someday. And this will happen time after time after time, which clearly is still happening to a lot of people. As I just mentioned, women don't have equal rights today. Just wait. It's okay. You have your turn. See? I feel better about myself for saying that. See how noble I am? Okay, that's me being incredibly sarcastic. And I would be infuriated if somebody very condescendingly said that to me. But I'm not being condescending. I care. See? You can see me smile, that knowing, empathetic smile. Next! Equality of what, though? What does that even mean? Well, as they saw it, it's two different things. It's equality under the law. Regardless of what you're born, if you're the king or the richest person in the world, or the poorest pauper. Okay. But remember, they didn't quite see it that way. But this is the idealized version. Idealized version. The law still applies to you. So if you're a king or rich, you can't get out of the law. If you break it, you're responsible, or you will be held responsible. By the way, does that happen? No. It's a really hard standard. I mean, and it's also really clear, you know, if you're accused of violating the law, a lot of how your ability to defend yourself relies upon how much money you have. I mean, if you don't have money, wow. But if you have money, you can hire lots of lawyers and probably get out of it. So there are flaws to this. Next, equality of opportunity. Everybody, regardless of where they're born, should have the same opportunity. Therefore, no nobility nor aristocracy will all be held to our own merit. But this is also really hard to define. If somebody has a head start, where head start on the starting line, head start on the starting line didn't quite work the way I wanted, but just imagine what I said. They have a clear advantage, don't they? I mean, my guess is probably almost all of you are planning on getting some kind of education after this, right? Well, if you're in a family with a lot of wealth, you have a clear advantage over a family that doesn't. It's not just paying for the college. You can make mistakes. If you have wealth, you can screw up. You can start a major in college and go, I don't like this, and go on to something else. For the vast majority of people, you make a mistake now, and what happens? You're kind of stuck, aren't you? Is that equality of opportunity? It's complex is the point. I mean, just imagine, and I always like this one because it fits here, all of us in here, our entire life and what we're going to do and how successful we'll be, all of us, me included. So I'm included. Let's pass a test on American history. Right now, at this moment. If you fail, you're going to be a total failure in life. If you pass, you do well. And all of us take the same test. All of us will have the same pencil, the same nice comfy chair to take it in, same lighted room, same amount of time. Everything's the same, right? So we have equality of opportunity, don't we? Why? We all have to take the same test. What's the big deal? Huh?
It's like you obviously know.
But we're taking the same test. Quit whining. Wait your turn.
Sorry.
No, do you see the issue with that? I mean, don't I will probably do better than you. Does that make me a better person? Yes. Because I make the rules. No, of course not. But I have the advantage right now. It's like the king being king because of luck of birth. At that moment, they had the advantage. It's totally unfair. Equality of opportunity, to get the point, it's hard to define. I think that's a really good idea. Do it right now in history. Okay, moving on.
No. I said no.
We could do more with about politicians. I mean, all this. There's not. Equality is complex. How do you address this? Oh, we'll fight over this. That's why you notice I chose the picture of equality with the distribution of slaves from 1820. All men are created equal, written by a slaveholder. Think about it for a second. Boy, there are contradictions. Next. So, who would like to read next? I'll gently stop you, but we're starting right here at that for the next part. I'm looking for a volunteer. Anybody want to volunteer? Reed, are you ready?
Sure.
Okay.
that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness.
Right there. Perfect place to stop.
That's what I was.
Life, liberty, the pursuit of happiness. But you notice two things. First off, Creator. When they flip the switch, that's when you got the rights. And unalienable means they can't be taken away. You have them. You can allow them to be taken away. But they can't be taken away unless you allow it. So with that, next part of the philosophy. Oh, and this always, whenever I see life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, I think of Patrick Henry. This is a lithograph from the 1840s of him in the House of Burgesses in 1867, one of the leading patriots. Here he is saying, I know not what course others will take, but for me, give me liberty or give me death.
I feel like you're all really dramatic.
Yeah. and what yes. No, they did not quite react. In fact, a lot of them were like, ooh, where are we going with this?
Whoa.
By the way, do you want to guess what Patrick Henry did for a living? From Virginia. A plantation owner who had slaves. Did you say actor? Very good. So, unalienable rights that can't be taken away technically. I mean, you have them. So, and there's me. There's me. There's Jefferson, Adams, Franklin. And we all have them, we know that. So Locke had that life, liberty, and property. But Francis Hutcheson looked at property, and that sounds just like the accumulation of wealth, greed. So he changed it to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Jefferson really liked that. And since Jefferson would use that, hey, don't reinvent the wheel unless you have to. But Jefferson was able to focus it to a real life situation, aka the new United States. So what is life? We say life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, and you think life, oh, that's the easy one. That's my way of saying it might not be quite as easy as you think. What's life? What is the right to life?
Not being dead.
Okay, very good. But a tree then has the same right.
Oh, fudge.
Grass, cattle, horse, a slave. I use that word very carefully, yes.
The right to make decisions.
And what do you call that? If you make your own decisions and no one can make it for you, you are what?
Sentient.
What? What's another word for it?
Independent.
Independent. Which I like. Thank you for that. That was good. I appreciate that one. Independence. You have independence. So you're not a slave. I love slaveholders saying everyone is equal. But it doesn't change the point. You just have, it's important just to remember the contradictions. Part of the reason why there's so many complexities in this country. But you're independent. You decide your own fate. Nobody tells you. That is why, to a person like Jefferson, if you work for a wage, you're a slave. Because you're reliant upon somebody else for your livelihood. And you must do what they say to survive. And you are no longer independent. Mm-hmm.
How did he make his living?
He's a plantation owner.
But isn't he still somehow, there's like a chain, right? Because he still has to get paid by someone else.
He has to.
Because he's selling stuff, so he's gone.
But he owns his farm. And so he decides who to sell it to. Nobody tells him what to grow. But nobody tells him to grow tobacco. He can grow other things. He doesn't even have to plant his crop because he owns it. But you work for somebody, you do what you have to do what they say.
I'm not sure I believe
If you have a farm, you decide what you're going to grow. It's yours.
yours.
If you work for somebody else, you don't own the machines. You don't own the farm if you work for somebody else. So you must do what they say.
But just the fact that he has so many slaves and what he's saying, I kind of.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. He's kind of a hypocrite.
Wow.
Did that blow your mind? Yeah, kinda. But the point is, when he was saying that, and to truly have life, you have to be independent. But he certainly was depriving other people of that. Next, what's liberty? I know not. Oh, I won't do it again. What's liberty? It was Gerald Ford's dog. Yes.
The right to freedom.
So you're on the right track. It's right to freedom, and it is something like freedom, but it's close. Because freedom, you can't just do whatever you want. That's not freedom.
Liberty is
Freedom within the law.
But it's not, you're on the right track. It's not law, quite law. Because you don't follow the law because the law is there. I mean, does anyone, who has a driver's license? Have you ever gone 2 or 3 miles over the speed limit? Yeah, you follow the law when you want to and when you don't want to, don't you?
We follow the law when people watch.
But you make a decision, don't you, to whether or not to do something. I mean, there's a reason I don't walk through the hall and steal from freshmen. Because it would be wrong. And somebody would see me. No, there's cameras. No, it's not that. So much better than more cameras. No, why do you obey the law? Why do you make decisions you do? What decides for you? Say it again. Your heart. Well, it's just pumping. What else? What inside you gives you your moral and ethical values? Your conscience. Exactly. So, freedom of conscience. It's freedom of conscience. That's what decides for you. You make a decision when you obey or not obey the law. You make that decision. It's not the law, it's what's inside you. And clearly some people have a stronger conscience than others. Don't look at me. But no, we all have different morals and ethicals and value system. But it's freedom of conscience. Let's get to pursuit of happiness, which of course means running around going, yeah, I'm happy. But don't forget, this is property. And think about it. What's your most valuable piece of property? Of everything you have, everything, what's the most valuable thing you have? Your left big toe. What's the most valuable thing you have? By the way, break your toe and you will think it's the most valuable thing. But what? Break your toe. What about yourself? Say it again. What about your body? Because what can you do with it?
Your ability to do.
Your ability. That's your body, that's your thing, it's your ability. Your potential, your knowledge, what you do with your hands. Isn't that your most valuable possession? What you can do. You could go, your pursuit of happiness is as far as your abilities can take you. And we all have different abilities. We're all good at different things. All of us. But it's as far as your abilities can take you. As long as you don't do what? Don't think about law, because these aren't laws, but you're on the right track. Infringe on others' rights. Because if your best ability is to roll people in the highway and steal their money, that's probably infringing on their rights. As long as you don't, by the way, this could be complex, because who defines this? All these things society has to define, and that can be pretty inconsistent. Yeah.
So these new rights, it's according to the Declaration, is it for everyone, whether you're a citizen or not, or is it
Yeah.
just,
Everyone.
so these are human rights?
These are human rights. And that was the big thing about the Declaration of Independence. Why would it have so much influence? Because a lot of countries, when they would form it, say, we're doing this, this is what France stands for. I'm just thinking about them, or Germany very particularly, when they created their country. This is German rights, because we're Germans. And for the United States, they started as all people have these rights. Now, the United States didn't always consistently do this. But this is a really important founding document that's going to have great influence around the world. In fact, as an American citizen, this is truly something to be proud of. This is a legacy. Once again, that and McDonald's, right? Yes?
Is this another short ID one too?
Yeah, so we have potential short ID on rights, potential short ID on equality. Should there be one more? The answer is yes. What is that one more? Oh, property. Well, I almost forgot one thing. Property. Property is more than just simply something you own, though. You can't be truly independent if your property is not safe. If at any time the powers that be might take away your property, you are not free. If everything you own can be taken away by some all-powerful force, like me, if I could take away everything you have from you, and by the way, what's taking away your abilities? I make you a slave. If I have that power, you will spend your entire life not worrying about decisions you make. You worry about making me what? Happy. And you're no longer free. And so property has to be protected. If you might be kicked out of your house at any time, you're not really free. It's complex, isn't it?
It's just all the what is Jefferson doing? He's writing this.
He really worried about it, but he liked his fine wine. He liked his library. He knew he was wrong, but he liked his life. Yeah. And then, that to secure these rights, governments are instituted amongst men, deriving their just powers from the consent of the governed. And that whenever any form of government becomes destructive to these ends, it is the right of the people to alter or to abolish it and institute new government, aka the social contract. And that comes from Locke and Rousseau. So I had to put even a bigger picture of Locke. Okay, I thought he had the other picture, and I realized he was the same one. I thought it was kind of funny, so I left it in. But governments get their power from the consent of the governed, aka the people. Governments only exist because the people let them. So the people give up a little bit of their liberty. They give up a little bit of their freedom to live in a society. Why do they do this? According to the Declaration of Independence, governments are allowed to exist to protect rights. And you might be thinking, wait a sec, what about a dictatorship? They don't get the consent of the people. Yeah, they do. Because if the people decide we don't like a dictator, they will overthrow the dictator. And it's not like an election. The dictator is usually killed. You know, the people ultimately have power. It might not seem like it, but they do. But if the government infringes on those, the people must change the government. They must change it. If it infringes. You notice I didn't put revolt. It could be an election. It could be change the Constitution. It could be new Constitution. It could be new form of government. But the people must change it. Pretty radical stuff because the people in charge don't want to change it. And they will usually make sure the government's very difficult to change. I will tell you about the Constitution and how difficult it is to change. But ultimately the people have power. The word for power is sovereign. The people. It doesn't mean vote. They weren't, that's not what they meant, even though we might interpret it as that. Because in the future, they would. Popular sovereignty is going to come to mean the people ultimately decide with majority rule, aka a vote. I know the bell is probably ringing, but I want to get to the last part. Popular sovereignty. And who decides their government? The people. In the 20th century, this will be called self-determination. The people must decide their own government. One of the reasons the United States would fight in World War I, a very controversial decision, would be let people decide their own governments. Did that happen? Gee. Last thing. The social contract is what Americans call democracy. That's a social contract. It's not a true democracy. But when we say we're a democratic country, it's because we think the people have power. And that was not from the creation, our idea. It's more complex than that. That would not become what Americans would consider democracy until the 1830s. when a very complex man would be president. Another one of those by the name of Andrew Jackson, who is both shockingly bad and shockingly good at the same time. Doesn't that kind of fit in with a lot of these people we're talking about? He's like, he's really good, he's really bad. It really depends on what day it is, what my feeling on him. One thing about Jackson, a lot of really good stories. So, it is funny that the current president likes him. Because Jackson hated people like him. He hated the very rich, the aristocracy. It's kind of funny. On that happy note, please look at your review list. Look at your review list tomorrow, 9 o'clock. Sound good? Yes, I know there's lots of contradictions.
Jefferson just.
Yeah, he's aggravated.
What time do you stream on Wednesday?
Nothing. But it's on YouTube, so you can watch it anytime.
Okay.
That's why I do it on YouTube. Goodbye. I looked into the light. Now I can't see anything. All right, gotta change cameras again. That's all I do is change cameras. We're ending the stream.